this street here in Reamstown and many other communities in the area. Floyd?
Good evening. I am going to explain some of the things that happened. I'm not an expert in this, but I happened to grow up with it because my father had a cigar factory. And as a young boy going to high school, I did about all the extras except making the cigars. I used to play a lot of basketball when I was in high school, and I'd get finished and play a Friday night, and the Saturday morning I'd get up about 7 o'clock and I'd go to the factory, which was up on Main Street, sit back a little from just below where Dungelberger's garage is. Frank Bratton had a large building there, and that's where my father had his factory. In the first place, he got into the business because during the Depression, all the building trades had stopped. He was working with the plasterers group in Berks County. And the money he had saved, he was losing all of it, so he got into different things, concreting, and that, of course, ended too, and then he got into the cigar business, and he went to a fellow in Lancaster by the name of Minkoff's Leaf Tobacco. And he told him what he wanted to do. So he went into making a cigar, and the first cigar he made, and one of the sayings was in those days, what the country needs is a good 5-cent cigar. And that's what he proceeded to make. As you can see, the cigar started from 5 cents, and then went to 8 cents, and then to 10 cents, and I don't know what he charged for his last cigars anymore. Maybe 15 cents. No, this one is still 10 cents. He went into the business twice. The second time was when he made the Sweigart special, and that's when he was the only one making the cigars, and he had it in the back of his place here in Church Street. To add something to it, this Amethyst building here, with what are the apartments, I believe, aren't they? Yeah, apartments. That was a large cigar factory when I was a little boy. Another one was up in back of where Mrs. Bray building is. And that was a Root cigar factory. He had a huge place. In fact, here's a picture. It's supposed to be about 1904, which you can look at closely. And look at how many people are there. You didn't think there'd be that many people in Reamstown at that time. But look at all the people that worked in the cigar factory. One of the articles I read on it mentioned the fact that over 90% of the people worked in the cigar factory. Now, that included many times farmers, because the farmers would get into making cigars. My grandfather, who lived at what is now South Reamstown Road, and he lived on a farm off to the side there. In the wintertime, he would train people how to make cigars. That was my grandfather Sweigart. My grandfather Adams also was a cigar maker, as most people in the area were. And if you look at some of the people's names that are here, I recognize quite a few that were local here. An interesting sideline is that when I was with the 104th Division, we went from basically Aachen through the Rhineland to Cologne. And one of the farms we come to, a very large farm, and here a man had a little shed off to the side. And here he had cigar making tools like I have here that my dad used. I thought that was amazing, but evidently that's where the trade started years ago. Also, across the street over here, this building was a cigar factory at one time. When I was a young boy, my sister and I would strip tobacco for Root Cigar Factory. That's how we earned ourselves an express wagon. And I also earned myself roller skates later on through stripping tobacco. Now, the kind of stripping tobacco we did is not the kind that the farmers do, which is like this. I don't know if you can see this or not. Here they're taking the huge leaves off of the big stalk, and they have a metal spear, and they spear it on the metal. You seldom, in our area, you seldom saw ladies doing that. It's always the men. Actually, the hardest part of that job was when you put it up on the barn to dry, you had to hold it up like this. I know I helped my father-in-law with that. And of course, they put it across the joist, and that's how they put it there to dry. If you drive anywhere in Lancaster County, you see where they have their tobacco drying. And they have different methods, but that's the one that I was used to. But this is, of course, the way that they call this, not stripping tobacco exactly, but it's spearing it and then drying it. Then the other type of stripping tobacco is when the farmers in the wintertime, that's what they would do. They take the leaves off of these huge stalks, like this that they'd spear. They take the leaves off of them. And you may have seen, years ago, they had to size it. They'd have it from this size to maybe this size. You've seen those, I'm sure, at different sales. That was called sizing. Today, they tell me, they do not do that anymore. They just put it there and they weigh it, and they give them so much a pound for it. Now, the stripping that I had to do with my father when he had the factory up here, and also when I was a little boy and we worked on it, was the kind. Now, this tobacco that I had is when my father was last in business about 35 years ago. So I dampened it up a little. But this is the way we would get it. And of course, one of the most difficult things would be to keep the proper moisture with the tobacco. And of course, you take it and you pull the, see this pretty old. Got it. So that's the way we call the stripping. And then they use the tobacco strips to put on their vegetables and so forth to keep the bugs away and things like that. Now this happens to be a wrapper. This is what went on the outside of the cigar. I might mention a little about the different types of tobacco. My father made what he thought and I thought was a pretty good cigar. He used mostly Puerto Rico tobacco, which is about this size or a little larger. Now you can see here the strip, just the bottom part of it. Havana was the same way. Sometimes the Havana would be about this long. And if you strip that for a couple of hours, man, that got tough in your thumb to pull that, break it off and pull it out. I know. That's why I remember. But anyway, that's what was made in the cigar. The reason for using a filler tobacco was because you could when you smoked, you could draw the tobacco through easier. It didn't get choked up. A lot of times, later on, they used what was left over from making tobacco, and they put those in what we used to call twofers, two for a nickel, in the early years. And that's the way they used up their extra tobacco. Well, those would get a lot of chokers in because, they bunch them together and put them in. But not so with the filler. The filler tobacco was Puerto Rico and Havana. Most of this, of course, was grown in those colonies. Before World War II, the wrappers were basically gotten from a place called Sumatra, or Sumatra if you want to pronounce it that way. After World War II, during World War II, of course, they couldn't get it. In the meantime, the New England states, particularly Connecticut, started growing a tobacco under it was called shade bone because it had a cover over it. And this was in fact, this is one of them. It's fairly thin, as you can see. And it served two purposes. It kept a lot of the bugs away from it that they had, and of course it kept it so it would grow more evenly. And Connecticut also grew a binder, a wrapper and a binder. Before that, most of our binders were just the Connecticut binders. And of course, there was another type of tobacco that was called the Florida wrapper. But the Florida wrapper, in my dad's estimation, was always too bitter, and the color wasn't as nice. Now, when you got the Sumatra wrappers, you had different types of colors to it. And they would be very fancy in how they would fix their different cigars according to different colors. Here you have one. On here it says Clara, and then it says Colorado Clara. In other words, a mixture between the two and Colorado. And then they would, as the cigars were made, they put them according to their colors so it would look nice in the box. That's why I brought this along, to show you that they had the different colors. My father never bothered much with that because he didn't have that many different colors, since he had, with the Connecticut shade grown, it was pretty much the same color. Maybe I should go back and explain that originally they did not have any boxes for the cigar. They just had a big barrel, and they put the cigars in this barrel. Well, along came the taxing units, and they wanted taxes. So naturally what they did, they started making them have stamps to put on. Today they don't use the stamps anymore. They figure, they know how much tobacco they buy. They've got to keep a record of that. And then they tax them according to how many pounds of tobacco they have. Even in my father's last years, they still use the stamps. But today they don't anymore. And they had to be very careful so that no one did any cheating. I know I read an article some years ago about how they had counterfeit tobacco stamps in the Lancaster area. Someone stamped some. And so that they had to be careful. So when he would get done, say every week, he had to weigh how much tobacco dust was there, so he had an accounting of everything. And I know when I discontinued the business, I had to do the same thing for the inspector to come around. Now they're not that fuzzy anymore. I should mention also that most of the cigars today now, and that's the very most expensive, use what we call a homogenized binder. They take a binder and they make it, and it's kind of like a paper, and it'll burn a little like paper. My father always, when he'd check the tobacco, he'd take it like this, and he'd have a cigar, and the lighted cigar, and he'd put against it like this, and it would burn evenly all the way around. Then we had a good tobacco to buy. And the paper, or what they call the homogenized binder today, isn't like that. In fact, I think they have a wrapper that way too. And it just burns. My father always said that it was the cigarettes that were bad in the smoking, not the cigars. And since my grandfather and both of them lived to be in their 80s, I'm sure it wasn't the tobacco that did them in. I think it was something else maybe rather than that. And my father always claimed it was the paper and the cigarettes that was bad for him, rather than something else anyway. I'd like to show you just a little here on some of the equipment I have. One of the most important is this board. This is what they used to bunch the cigars, which I'll show you later. Of course, the bunches would be put in these molds, which I'll roll a cigar for you then to show you. After that is done, then they put them in a press like this, and they press them for a certain length of time. Basically, a person could make maybe 450 cigars a day if he started early enough in the morning and kept going. And some got very efficient at it. My father was pretty good at one time, but in his later years, he just worked when he felt like it. He didn't always feel that good, so he didn't work that fast then. This, of course, is when they have the finished rolling of the cigars, they put them in this. And then, of course, when they had 50, they tie them up like this. The next part of the equipment they had after they did that was to put them in a huge case. My dad had one that was had metal inside of it, and there they put them in and let them, I guess you'd call, season them for a while before they use them. And the next step after that, of course, would be to press the cigars. They'd take them out and put them in the box, and as they went along, they'd put this in the box, and they'd have fillers in between every layer, and then they'd press them down on it like this as they'd go along. And of course, you can see that was a different type of work. They usually had one person that would do that. I don't know, Jack, you remember Hannah Withers, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she did most of the cellophaning and the filling of the cigar boxes.
Would that make them more or less square?
What?
That would make them...
Yeah, it would make them more or less the same shape, yes. Yes, that's what it would do. Of course, like I said, my job was to do the cellophane. When I took the job over from Hannah Withers, my brother, who was interested in it, she would blow them like this and then stick a cigar in. Well, that took a lot of time to do that. So I learned to just twist it like this and stick the cigar in. Till I got done, I used to, in the morning, now this is starting about 7 o'clock or so, in the morning till about 12 o'clock, I'd cellophane about 5,000 cigars. And that kept us steady. These cellophane wrappers, by the way, are United States Air Force Band. Colonel George Howard come to town, and he wanted to have some real good cigars to hand out to his friends in Washington, D.C. when he was down there with the Air Force Band. And in doing that, he had the stamp on it. He was a good politician, Colonel Howard. And that's why I have these left over yet. He had more than what he really bought that. In fact, I have enough. I can give each of you one of these if you'd like to take it along as a souvenir. Now, some of the other equipment, some people would use a cutter for the cigar when you take them out of the mold, like this. Most of them, though, had it set up as you see here, so that they could do that. And of course, they had a means of measuring it so that they all stayed the same. One of the most important things
this side of the big.
there were the cutting tools. Now these were used for the person that did what they called the wrapping of the cigar. And if you can see, they're different. You can come and look at these later. All different sizes and shapes here. Some of this equipment I got from Dr. Stair, because he had an office full on. When he gave up, then he said, "Here, you may as well have them." So that's how I got some of these. These are interesting because almost all of these were made by the men that made the cigars. They would take old saw blades and cut them up and use these. Then, of course, they had a hone on it to keep them sharp. I don't have them that sharp anymore. But if you look at them close, you can see that's where they come from. And as I remember, now these are fairly clean, but as I remember, they'd be covered all over with tobacco. It would be pretty tough to scrape them off unless you did it all the time. I should mention also that almost every little town in the area had their cigar factories before I get into trying to make one of these. Here it shows the Kinfords Reamstown cigar makers. This was about 1915. So you can look at this. Did you get to see the one, Grace? That you
Yes.
wanted? Now here's one of the ones from Denver. This is Dornbach's. Shows a picture of them. I already showed you one about Roots. And this is another one from Roots. Here is one from, believe it or not, Shanny. You didn't know there were that many people in Shanny, did you? But see, they'd come from the farms, they'd come from all around, so that's... And then, guess what? Reinholds. Reinholds. I remember also I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Houghton, and I couldn't believe how huge that factory was. And they had, what, 24 homes there in Houghton at the time that I was there as a young boy. I don't know how well you can see me if I try to do this. My molds up here, you have a place to set them, you see. Also, they had a piece of wood here and a piece of wood here, and then what's left over they could just push into that drawer. And then at the end of the day, of course, they'd clean it out, you know.
What would they do with that? The leftover cut, trim?
Well, it's like I said before, they would make what we call twofers, two for a nickel.
Oh, okay.
If a nickel cigar was the best, and then the two for the nickel. I know my dad had, he had a grinding machine, had little spikes on it, and I would grind it up to make it very fine for him, and then he made cigars out of that. And I think his was called Charmaine or something like that. And then instead of putting 50 in a box, he put 100 in a box. But they didn't make them as fancy as these. They didn't press them down as much or use a lot of cellophane or anything. They just put them in and sold them in. That's the way they did it here. So these will be interesting for you to look at. Okay.
How much was a loaf of bread when a cigar was a nickel?
I can't, I don't know if I can answer that.
I think a lot of people made their own bread back then.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, the milk was around a little liter, or a nickel a quart.
Yeah. Now, I should really sit down to do this. Always when they would make their cigars, I'll tell you, they had kind of a pretty good technique. They learned as they went along. You see the rib, the heavy rib that shows, that would always go in the inside. And then...
Let's see. The heavy rib.
See the heavy rib. See, the other side is smooth. And what they would do, if you made cigars a lot, they'd know just about how much to put in their hand to make a cigar. Just about the right size, you know. Put it in like this. And like so. I don't know if I'm getting this long enough or not. This is pretty wet. This wouldn't smoke too well. I should also mention that mostly the man and wife worked as a team. The man would do the bunching and the wife would do the rolling and the cigars. And of course in my dad's case, when he worked alone, he did both of them. But I know my mother helped quite often, that she would do most of the rolling. At one time, I think he had about 6 to 8 people working for him, which was, in the midst of the Depression, wasn't all that bad. I know the fellow he bought his tobacco from, his mint cup, during World War II, he said, you should go and expand now. He said, then you could make yourself a lot of money. Well, it so happened that they had a law that didn't allow them to do that. And Minkoff told him, he said, look, he said, everyone else is doing it, why don't you? My dad said, I can't do that. He said, I can't break the law. So he never got into it in a real big way. I should mention this also, that at Harry Goodentown, was a cigar maker. You may remember Harry as a cigar maker. Also Ira Ressler, when my dad gave up his business the first time, Ira Ressler had the little cigar factory, and he had it just in back of where the post office is now, the house above that, and in back there's a little building back there. So all they did was take the bunch like this. Now I should really have a place to set this on. You can turn it like this. And then they roll it up. I'll not make it fancy. So you just take it quickly like this and roll it up, put it in here like this, cut the end off, like that, and then they fill it up, and then they put it over here. And when they had that done, then they take the wrapper like this. Now this didn't go as quick as what I'm doing, but they take the wrapper like this, and again, the broad rib would be on the inside, so it would look nice. And then of course they take, I don't know if any of these cut well enough or not, but they take it like this, and they had to learn to roll the cigar left-handed and right-handed, depending on how they had it, you see, because they didn't want it to, in fact, it just worked out better. See, then you'd have something like this. That'll give you a chance to roll it up. And in this case, I could get another one out of this. Like this. And usually that was too small, so you put that in underneath here and put that away. Now this one looks like I should roll it from the right instead of the left. And then you just roll it up. Now this isn't as big as they normally make them.
I couldn't see, but are you rolling it across the corner like
Yes.
you do carrot cake?
Yeah, just like carrot, like that. It's difficult. You should really be standing over them and you can see it. Now this isn't as large as what I normally make. The next step, at one time they had quite a to-do about people, instead of using their knife, they'd go like that and bite them off and stuff like that. Well, it got too bad, so people really fussed about that. They wanted to have it a little more sanitary. In the process, this was, I don't know how many years ago they used this, but they had a paste, which is a powder, as you can see, like this. Now this has darkened over the years. Normally, when my dad had it, it was very light, kind of like Vaseline. And this paste is called Arabic, and it's taken from a plant that's called acacia, A-C-A-C-I-A, and it's from trees and shrubs that have very fine leaves. And it's generally grown in tropical or warm climates like Australia, Africa, and Asia. And then, of course, when they wrap it up like this, some of them had very fancy ways of doing this. Now, this isn't very good at all. I'm just doing a little, give you a little idea. Then they take some of this and have it pasted together like this. Gives you an idea of that. And then, of course, they've measured like so, cut it off, and put it in there. there, then they were ready for the next one.
My dad used to take a pin or a toothpick and puncture a hole.
Ah,
In
you're
that-
a hit on me now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They don't get dressed on Saturday evening and got even right over sick.
That brings up another question, it may be out of time, but, and I don't smoke. But the fellow who was going to smoke a cigar, he would take it and bite the tip off before he lit it. Why was that? So he get,
Oh, yeah,
More
because see, if you see the tip here, you
It's
can't draw
sealed.
any air through it.
oh,
And they had many fancy contraptions to cut the tip off, you know, to smoke it. Does anyone know what this is?
Probably the thing that they cook the hole with.
This is, believe it or not, a hat pin. And years ago, almost all the cigar makers would have a hat pin. If you remember seeing pictures of people years ago when they had those big hats and they'd stick the hat pin in the back, the ladies, I mean, stick the hat pin, that's what this is. And that's what they'd use. They'd stick this through so that they could draw on the cigar to smoke. Here's another piece that is a little unusual. This is a cigar box opener. Cigar box opener. They take it in like this, and of course open up the cigar box like that. In fact, this is the compliments of W. Stewart, manufacturer of cigars, Reading, PA. And it says, the Zur cigar box opener, address, Reading, PA. Kind of a novelty, that. This I have to mention because one of the most difficult things was to keep the tobacco in the proper shape. I remember my father mentioning so many times how the people would complain that the fellow in charge of the tobacco was either too dry or too wet. And it was quite a problem. And I know my father would always have particularly the wrappers, which is what I have here. And he'd have it in like a canvas and a piece of wax paper. And he'd have it in there, and that kept it in pretty good shape. Now, this that I have here, when I was up at Colonial, I just left it in this bag, and it stayed fairly moist all the time. I didn't have the moist. But anyway, when it would get too dry, they'd have a bottle, and this is what they'd use. They'd spray that on to keep it in shape. A few other things that maybe I should call your attention to. By the way, you realize as they filled these bunches, they'd press them so that they would stay all pretty much the same shape. Just as they had one row after the other, they would put it in this box and press them down. These are all for the paste that they would use when they had the wrapper, to fix the wrapper on the end. This is another one. Most of these, I'm sure, that the average person didn't bother going and buying one. They would, you know what that is, from a table. From a table, you know. Now, some of them were a little fancy, though, and they'd have something like this to put it in. My parents never bothered. Theirs was usually like this or something like this, because you really didn't need a lot of cigars. And it doesn't take very long to take the paste from this to make plenty of paste. I think I'm about ready for a few questions now.
And what about the manufacturing of boxes? When you said about people like on the pictures, did that include box makers too? Or that was a separate industry, wasn't it?
The first man that made these cigar boxes was a man from Lincoln, a fellow by the name of Wechter. And I saw something in the paper just recently of 100 years ago. A fellow that from Lincoln, this Wechter, was making cigars 100 years ago. And they made them quite fancy. I should mention also that one of my jobs was also to put these stamps on, as you can imagine. Had to get paste and put these on, and also these on the end like this. And each one had their own factory number. In this case, my father's factory number was 541, the 1st District, state of Pennsylvania. Later, when he got into business the second time, I don't know what factory number he had. Oh, then he had, instead of a factory number, they give him a permit number that was 2413 PA. And usually on them, they would have designated how much they could charge for the cigar. I don't know if they do that today anymore. The ordinary retail price of the cigars herein contained is intended by the manufacturer to be more than 8 cents each and not more than 15 cents each. And of course, as you can see, he has 10 cents on it.
By the way, on the cigar boxes, it's interesting. In my time, I used to go to the Wechter cigar box factory in Akron to get the strips to make kites.
Oh yes.
In the 30s there. Now, whether that was the same Wechter family or not, I don't know from Lincoln.
That could have been.
But I know exactly where he lived in.
Did he make cigar boxes?
Oh yes, I think he made them there.
Well, I know this business. I read material from years back. They didn't have the transportation they have now. So they had businesses in all these little towns. Then when they consolidated, that's why people have to travel so far to go for their work and so forth. So that was really very interesting.
But what struck me was the Wechters. It was still the Wechter name
Right.
there in Akron there.
Right. I have somewhere here, I have something else I should show. Cigar bands. That used to be a fancy thing. You'd try to get a man to smoke a cigar and you'd say, hey, I want that cigar band. And you could put it on like a ring. So this is one that I have from some time back, and here's a Phillies. I don't know how old this is, but it's a number of years old. And these cigars happen to be some that my father made at the very end. Some of the last cigars he made. And so I'm keeping those, and eventually I plan to give it to the Lancaster School District. They're working on a cotton and tobacco institute where you can go, like it's a museum where you can go and visit, take a walking tour of Lancaster and see that. So that I have, here's another. You can see how fancy some of the boxes were that they made. I have some more at home, but I didn't bring all of these along. Here, of course, is what they used to keep their knives sharp. Leave that home. And here, he had to put on his stamps, he had to put the stamp on them, the date and so forth. Why, I don't know, but that's what they had to do. I have something else to show here. Maybe it's over here. I should say this, that oh yes, here it is. Quite a few people over the years that knew me and made a point to see that I got some of these WWS cigar boxes. Notice, for example, this one, Odd Nails and Screws. Brooks Reddick got this one for me when he worked at Denver Supply. I come in there one day, he said, hey, he says, I can put this in another box, I'll give you this one. And that's how I got that one. Over the years, now these were samples that were sent to us. I say us because when my dad died, I took the business over for a couple of years, not to make cigars, but I thought, well, just make them for my own amusement or smoking and pleasure. Here are some of the fancy things that they would put cigars in. You didn't get that one for a nickel, I'll tell you that. Or one that comes in one like Jack nuts his head because he's a cigar smoker. You know. These were samples that were sent out because instead of putting a head on, as I did here, they would roll this in with the tobacco. And then, of course, you didn't have to bite the tip off or anything. You could just start smoking. Now, basically, the size of cigar I had would have used one of these larger ones. All of these are marked differently. So,
I'm trying to think, didn't they make aluminum cigar holders that held 2 cigars? They opened up, closed.
oh yes, I'm sure. Oh yes, I'm sure.
I think the same one, but it's one
Yeah,
time.
right. I should mention this also. A couple of years ago, we went to St. Augustine, and in the old city part of St. Augustine, there was a man making cigars just the way my dad did. And I guess he's still doing it there because that's kind of a tourist attraction. And I talked with, I believe a lady told me this, that in Tampa, they also have some that are doing that. It's kind of like a museum, and you can see them making the cigars. I'm open for questions now. I want to learn something. Yes.
How did your father market the cigars that he made? What was the
Good
next
question,
step on that?
Good question. As you can imagine, during the depths of the Depression, it was very difficult to get started. In fact, he would put a box of cigars into many different places. Of course, you know, Prohibition ended, and so he went to these places. Well, it seems like going to a place to drink a beer and smoke a cigar was a good thing to do. So he put cigars in all these different places in the area. My stepbrother, Carl Weaver, went to the Berks County area. He did the same. And then, of course, over the years, they kept ordering more and more. Eventually, we had a few dealers. One of the dealers was this Mellinger that had candy and cigars, and I guess tobacco, or cigarettes also. And he would come and take 5,000 quite a few times. Then they had another man in the Berks County area by the name of Rhodes, and he would order quite a few. And that's how they got started, because, and of course my dad would talk it up, you know. I know one of the first places he put some in were when the hotel was here in the corner, and the Reamstown Athletic Association. Those were two of the first places he put some in there. And then, of course, his last years that he made cigars, he had these people coming and wanting more and more. And I remember this Rhodes come there one time that I was there. He said, gee, he says, I need 3,000 right now. I said, can't help you. He says, all I can give you is 500, because he wasn't working that much. He was just doing.
My dad was a good customer.
Oh, yes.
I must go to WWS to get cigars because we're having a family reunion, and my dad would pay us out cigars. And I didn't know at that point in time I was going to marry his son.
Who might be the last man to make cigars around here? Would you have been, or?
I am, I think, right in this area, in this immediate area.
And
But I didn't make them to sell, so I'd imagine my father was the last one that made some to sell.
what year would that have been?
I think his last year was 56. Yeah, 56. I have his records here somewhere. I was trying to look at some of these people here. I always noticed some of the older cigar makers, and they had one of these green shades. When I go into Ruth's Cigar Factory, they had these green shades, and I was trying to get a hold of one. If you know of one anywhere, let me know, because that's what I need. One of these green shades, you know, it just has a little strap around the back. But I don't notice any here, except a couple of fellas are wearing caps here on this one. I don't know, wouldn't you like to come up and look at some of this material here? And then you can keep asking more questions if you want to. I think I showed almost everything that I have here.
I used to sit on my grandfather's box. He'd keep the tobacco in a box, a wooden box, and I used to sit on that and watch him as he'd roll in his little factory up there on Church Street. He was about my age.
Here's his the certificate of registry as manufacturer of cigars, and this one is dated now September 9, 1954. I don't know if that's the original one when he started on Church Street here, I'm not sure about that. Or if they gave them one every year.
Do you know, was there more than one along the back there?
What's that?
Do you know whether there was more than one cigar manufacturer along the back there?
Not other than the one down here at these
I
apartments.
went to school there, I remember kids pointing up there and saying that was a cigar factory.
What's he?
That
In
was
back of
good.
Mrs. Graybill.
Cole, Mrs. Cole.
Oh, Mrs. Cole. No, Graybill.
Yeah, that was,
Mrs. Cole.
Grable Cole.
Yes. Yes, you could have.
33, 34.
Because my grandfather Adams was up in years when he still worked at that good cigar factory. And that was in the, I believe, the late 30s.
And
They had a huge building in the back there of Mrs. Cole.
in the 30s, I definitely know there was still one factory in Akron. Steiner, I believe it might have been a Steiner name. I know exactly where it was.
Yeah.
I think they had about 4 to 6 people working there.
That could very
But I never went in.
Yeah.
And in fact, Louis Eichelberger was one of the persons that I know worked there.
You've got to realize in those days you didn't have minimum labor laws.
Right.
They couldn't get away with it now, I guess. I know this, Red Line in New York County has been a manufacturer of cigars, and I'm sure somewhere there they'll probably have some that still make them there. I know, just out of curiosity, I checked to find out what a cigar making machine would be. Now I've seen some of them and they're a huge machine. And this was in about 1958. And they wanted something like $15,000 for a machine. Well, I didn't have anything like that. And I wasn't going to go into it for that because it's a cutthroat business, something like that. Not only that, but they had to pay a mechanic $200 a week just to keep the thing running. And $200 a week at that time was pretty nice money. You know. So, yes.
Did your father go out to buy his tobacco, or did people? How did he get the tobacco, the local tobacco that he used?
He seldom used local tobacco.
Oh.
Good question. Local farmers, from time to time, would put their tobacco under the hay, and that would be what they call sweating it. And they generally put it there at least 1 year, and most of the times 2 years. If they didn't do that, it wouldn't taste well at all, and it wouldn't smoke well. So that's what they do. He only used local tobacco several times, and that was when people would bring their own tobacco to him, and then he would make the cigars. Like one of the best-known local tobaccos, as I remember, was Havana Seed. That was a pretty decent tobacco that they could use. Now, this was just for the filler,
Yes.
the inside.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What was your best selling cigar?
Well, his best cigar was this WWS, which was made the same as this Sweigart Special. Yeah. And the combination was, the inside was this Puerto Rico that I showed you, plus the Havana. I'd say the combination was like every cigar, if he put about 1 sprig of Havana, sometimes 2, would give it a good flavor. My grandfather Adams, who lived with us for a few years, he always liked the twoffers my dad had made. Because the ends of that, when you cut them off, had a lot of Havana in it, you know. And then when you made a cigar of that, you had Havana through the whole cigar. So he always liked those as good as the others. But they didn't always smoke that well, because they had a couple of children. You had to use the hat pin sometimes, so that you could draw them. Yeah. I don't know. I think I've covered almost everything. If you have some more questions, I'd appreciate it. Have any of you stripped tobacco that you know that you've done? You have. Jack has, I think.
I work with tobacco out on the farm, you know, from the time of
Oh, yes.
from time of planting it to
Yeah.
till the time it's stripped, and you might want to mention about the bill box for some of the youngsters. The big box, and maybe they put a wagon jacket up to the ceiling and jack it down.
Oh, to press them down.
Press it down.
So that was for the bales of tobacco that
paper.
shipped.
Yeah,
Tied it with string.
Yeah.
yeah, with paper. Then.
Wrapped it in brown paper and tied it with the ropes. We did that too.
That was work, getting that tobacco, like you're talking about spearing out in the field.
Yeah.
To bring that big stalk up and get it, some people with one hand could do it and bring it right down through the spear, with a crunch, and
Yeah.
split the stalk in two. Others had to take both hands.
Right.
Put 5 stalks on the average. If they're real small, you put more on. Heavier, you put less on.
I didn't do that often, but when I married Grace, I got into helping a little of that. I remember the thing I hated the worst was when you had to stand like that and hold it up to the guy up above there, and you're slowly getting it in place, which was usually her dad, and he was getting up in years then.
How about the dirtiest job? Sometimes you wore a rubber apron when you talked or suckered it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I never
Tobacco
got in
juice,
that.
green tobacco.
Grace got in on a lot of that. She got in on the planting.
Or finding the tobacco worms.
Yeah. We used to get a penny a worm.
A penny a worm.
I still think my worst experience is when I had to grind the tobacco and all that dust was there. I went in the sneezing smell because that dust would really get in your nose. That and especially with the Havana. Havana was a leaf about this long and had a pretty thick rib. When I had to pinch it off with my thumbnail, and boy, after a half a day of that, man, it was a sore thumb.